Bakwena Bamare and Gratham Mary, the Director General of Department of Rural Land Reform, case number 1312 of 2017 for the handing down of judgment.
May it please the court, my justice?
Yes, Ms. Mutenga.
I would like to tender an apology to my junior, just so that it's read in the court. There was a misunderstanding between my junior and I. It is not that he did not have, or we had not prepared a reply, or we didn't have something to reply. The misunderstanding was that he would be addressed to reply. So I just wanted to tender that apology to my junior.
Thank you, Ms. Mutenga, and we have taken into account everything, and we are satisfied that what he may have had to deal with in reply will be taken into account in our judgment.
As it pleases the court.
Thank you. The court has deliberated, and I am going to deliver the judgment of the court. That is the judgment of all the justices sitting in this matter. First, the first respondent ended up and tendered for admission an affidavit by an expert witness, which was objected to by the second respondent on the basis that it is prejudicial in that the second respondent had not had the opportunity to consider it and to apply their minds as to whether they should file any expert reports or affidavits in response thereto. We have decided to accept the admission of the affidavit because its contents are consistent with the facts that are already before court, and it did not raise anything contentious or anything that would not have been anticipated by the second respondent. In the judgment on the merits, we have decided as follows. One, the question at the center of this application is what amount would be just and equitable compensation taking into account the spirit, purport, and objects of the Constitution and Section 25 brackets 2 and brackets 3 thereof. 2. Bakwena Bamare was awarded restitution of land in terms of the Restitution of Land Rights Act 22 of 1994 for land around Baklu and Midrand. 3. A significant portion of that land belongs to the first respondent, namely the Downton Farm, a 97-hectare farm bordering Baklu and across the highway from the Waterford Estate and Mall of Africa. Next paragraph. The department alleges that at present the land is zoned as agricultural land and is prepared to pay 940,000 rand in compensation. The first respondent alleges that this calculation fails to take into consideration the current process underway to rezone the land as commercial property and the plans to develop it accordingly. The first respondent submits that the true value of the land is therefore 15,791,388 rand, but is prepared to accept no less than 10 million rand for the land in compensation. We were addressed on the factors to take into account under Section 25, brackets 3 of the Constitution, which are A, the current use of the property, B, the history of the acquisition and use of the property, C, the market value of the property, D, the extent of direct state investment and subsidy in the acquisition and beneficial capital improvement of the property, and E, the purpose of the expropriation. Section 25 of the Constitution in its extent reads as follows. Sub 1, no one may be deprived of property except in terms of law of general application, and no law may permit arbitrary deprivation of property. Sub 2, property may be expropriated only in terms of law of general application, A, for a public purpose or in the public interest, and B, subject to compensation, the amount of which and the time and manner of payment of which have either been agreed to by those affected or decided or approved by a court. Sub 3, the amount of the compensation and the time and manner of payment must be just and equitable, reflecting an equitable balance between the public interest and the interests of those affected, having regard to all relevant circumstances, including the factors that I have just read. Sub 4, for the purposes of this section, A, the public interest includes the nation's commitment to land reform and to reforms to bring about equitable access to all South Africa's natural resources. And B, property is not limited to land. Next paragraph. In section 25(8), the Constitution provides that section 25 should not be construed in a manner which constitutes an impediment to the state from taking legislative and other measures to achieve land, water, and related reform in order to address the results of past racial discrimination, provided that any departure from the provisions of section 25 is consistent with section 36, brackets 1, the limitations provisions in the Constitution, in terms of section 25, brackets 9. In terms of section 25, brackets 9, Parliament is required to enact legislation that deals with security of tenure as required by section 25, bracket 6 of the Constitution. The Constitutional Court in First National Bank of South Africa, Ltd, trading as West Bank versus Commissioner, South African Revenue Service, and another, First National Bank of South Africa, trading as West Bank versus Minister of Finance, stated that, quote, all in one way or another, referring to the factors that we have already dealt with, underline the need for and aim at redressing one of the most enduring legacies of racial discrimination in the past, namely the grossly unequal distribution of land in South Africa. Market value would serve as the starting point for the determination of compensation according to authority that the court has been referred to, which would then be adjusted either upwards or downwards, depending upon the application of the other factors, which would thus strike an equitable balance between the public and private interest. The underlying rationale for this two-step approach is that there is no precise method for calculating values that are based on considerations of equity, and justice. However, this two-step approach has received endorsements in various authorities that we have been referred to. Next paragraph. In his valuation, Mr. Scholz effectively utilizes the point guard, if I'm pronouncing the French properly, principle by omitting any consideration of the 2004 judgment in determining the market value of the affected land. By contrast, the valuation completed by DPP does not apply the same method. We have also taken into account expert evidence, which we shall not elaborate on further. Our view is that the market value of the land can only be determined by reference to its agricultural value, which is its current use. We reject the invitation to take into account the developmental potential of the land. Next paragraph. In coming to the above conclusion, we draw strength from the point guard principle as noted. As noted, this principle states that in determining the market value of the land to be acquired by the state through an expropriation scheme, the deciding authority must exclude any increase or decrease in the land value which would occur as a result of the expropriation. We note that the increase being urged upon this court is not as a direct result of the expropriation, but we take into consideration the operating logic of the principle. Applying the approach advanced by the landowner could distort the real value of the land and produce outcomes which are dissonant to the purposes behind compensation. Compensation in terms of Section 25 must first and foremost serve the public interest. The monies to be paid to expropriated persons emanate from the public purse, and they are constitutionally designed to serve a discrete legal purpose, not to compensate each and every possible potential loss of commercial opportunity. That approach could also create perverse incentives for landowners to artificially raise the potential value of their land if they know that by, let me read that again. That approach could also create perverse incentives for landowners to artificially raise the potential value of their land if they know that by the simple device of generating interest in the land, its market value could be significantly altered. We note that since the time of the purchase to the present, the affected land has been used by the applicant and his family for agricultural purposes. Next paragraph. Having considered authority that has been referred to, that the court has been referred to, the problem with the two-step approach is that if market value is the main concern, this can undermine efforts to speed up land reform. It is prudent to allow the transformative purpose of land reform play a central role in determining what is just and equitable. Next paragraph. While applying the two-stage methods in this judgment, we have specifically not given market value any undue advantage over the other considerations. We have attempted to undertake a balanced consideration of the factors which would influence our determination on what is just and equitable. As a result, we have concluded as follows. It is determined that the correct amount, which would be just and equitable, should take into account the value as determined by the municipality at 940,000 rand, adjusted upwards to take into account the expenses that the first respondent has already incurred and her personal circumstances. The amount of compensation is therefore set at 4,750,000 rand. Next paragraph. The court makes the following order. A, in terms of section 25 brackets 2 brackets B of the Constitution, it is ordered that the just and equitable compensation to be paid to the first respondent is 4,750,000 rand for the acquisition of the property described by this court as the Downton Farm described further above. B, there is no order as to costs. And before the parties rose to acknowledge the judgment, the other two judges are expected to indicate whether they agree with the judgment being read by the presiding judge, and they've indicated to me that they agree with mine. Thank you very much, Mr. Saint. I see Mr. Baba is not here.
He was around for quite a while, Justice, then he left.
Yes, this I suppose brings to the end the proceedings.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would like to comment on the proceedings?
Just to thank the justices for the outcome I was eagerly anticipating. It was certainly an amazing exercise, which I've indicated to all concerned should not just be academic, but should be equally enjoyed. And I think it turned out to be exactly that. We appreciate that. Thank you, judges.
Thank you. Is there anything?
Yes, thank you to everybody for being here. I know your participation today really did make this court a success. To the representatives from the Human Rights Commission, thank you for attending and being here the entire day. It really was an honor having you here. My name's Sankri, Reddy, by the way, for any of you who don't know. I work quite closely with SABWiL, and I've been given the honor of doing the vote of thanks today. First, our thanks have to go to our justices. That is Advocate Chief Justice Malindi SC, who does not need an introduction, and I won't even attempt to give him an introduction for fear of falling short. But we really are honored to have you here today and have the benefit of interacting with you and seeing you in action, so to speak. Thank you very much for your presence. To Advocate Deputy Chief Justice Mayet and Justice Mutenga, thank you so much for your time, energy and expertise which you brought to this court, without which it could not have been a success. I know your line of questioning has no doubt raised questions in our counsel's mind about how things actually practically play out in court. Everything is a balance, and even though you walk through the door with conviction and confidence in your argument, whether a judgment goes in your favor or not really depends on the way it's received. You did, however, do a great amount of preparation. Your presentations were precise, and the zeal which you brought to the proceedings today, we really hope filters through to your practices in whichever area you decide to practice in. It really will stand you in good stead. Thank you all for being here. We do have a small token of our appreciation for our justices and for our council.
Could we have the last word on this section of votes of thanks, etc.?
Sorry?
Could we have the last word?
The Chief
The last
Justice
word, the justices, of course, of course. Up to you.
I would like also to thank all the participants. It's been great, and as Ms. Reddy indicated, the level of preparation is what is expected in practice, and we really appreciate that. We appreciate the introductory remarks from the Human Rights Commission, and that indicate that the Constitution that is being celebrated, the 21st anniversary is being celebrated this year of the signing of the final Constitution in 1996, is not a self-executing instrument. It's an instrument that requires the citizens to have a determination to ensure that it is its objectives and the values enshrined in it are realized. And we wish to thank you for that, and we wish to thank also the organizers of this seminar, SABWiL, for creating an environment that approximates what happens in court. And when you go to court as representatives, you will realize that what you did today approximates to what you will be doing when you go to court. And it will have its factors which will render all of you nervous, just like it happens to all of us, and it happens to our most senior colleagues. If they told you how nervous they get when they are called upon to stand up and address the court, you won't believe it. They just manage to hide it well, but at the end of the day, they sigh a sigh of relief because they've been tense, they've been nervous until that moment came. And thank you to everyone that I might have omitted, and I'm sure the other two justices may want to pass a word or two of appreciation to it about what has happened today. Thank you very much, Ms. Reddy. We've had our last word.
Thank you all. I think everybody deserves a big hand for thank you. There is lunch served on the first floor. You are all invited. Please do attend, and can take the discussions or the proceedings that we had this morning on. We can continue them on a more informal basis. Thank you.